I love the MGM Tarzan films and decided to take a break from watching and reviewing old PRC crime films to check in with The Lord of the Jungle. Now, this time it's going to be Tarzan's Secret Treasure from 1941. This one features the legendary Johnny Weismuller as Tarzan, Maureen O'Sullivan as Jane, Johnny Sheffield as Boy, and of course Cheetah. The story here involves a pesky expedition team that arrives in the jungle anxious for gold and willing to do whatever it takes for their greedy gain. But can Tarzan stop these ne'er-do-wells? Well, let's check this one out and see. Like usual, I'll give a summary of the film, spoiler-free, and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up and Tarzan and Jane arrive, and you know the Tarzan cry. But check it out, it's the lesser-known Jane cry. It's a little odd. In any case, Tarzan and Jane meet up with Boy, and Tarzan says, "Swim!" So off they go for a swim, and the water looks so clear and inviting as they just kind of play around in the water. Boy tags along with a turtle and then dives for some shiny rocks that will be important a little later in the film. Meanwhile, Tarzan and Jane do some underwater acrobatic swimming. Now, Cheetah, meanwhile, is teasing an elephant and bops it on the head with some exotic fruit, to which the elephant replies by blasting Cheetah. Silly. Well, a little later, Boy shows some of these mysterious golden rocks to Jane, who tells him that, this is gold and it would be worth a lot of money to those of the outside world. And they proceed to get their lunch ready with their Swiss Family Robinson-style setup, as Jane explains more about civilization and about cities and radios and airplanes and so on, all to the fascination of Boy. Well, late that night, apparently all of Jane's talk about the outside world has really captured the interest of Boy. So he takes some of the gold that he has collected and sneaks off into the night. While on his way the next day, Boy helps rescue a young native, Tumbo, played by actor Cordell Hickman. He's been chased by a ferocious, growling rhino, and he manages to swing in and save him. And they quickly become friends, and even though they don't share a language, they are able to kind of exchange their names with each other and establish that they are friends. Boy goes with him to his village, see him home, and it's here that he notices that a lot of the villagers are all suffering from some unknown disease. Tumbo visits his ailing mother, and he cries as she passes from this mysterious disease. The natives, however, they see Boy, and they see him as the cause of the disease, and they are about to grab him and burn him when 3 explorers show up, shooting their guns, and they rescue him. So there's an exchange of gunfire and spears and so on, and then suddenly Tarzan arrives, so the villagers clear out. Tarzan thanks these explorers for saving Boy, and we meet these characters. We have Reginald Owen as Professor Elliot. Reginald Owen, by the way, was also Admiral Boom from Mary Poppins. Remember him? Tom Conway plays Medford. Now, he always seems to be showing up as a sketchy character in old films like this. There's Philip Dorn as Vandermeer, and Barry Fitzgerald as Dennis O'Doul, the lively Irish explorer. So these men are all there, led by Professor Elliot, and they're looking for an ancient tribe, it would seem. So they head over together to Tarzan and Jane's treehouse. Now, it's here that Boy innocently shows Vandermeer and Medford some of the cool gold nuggets that he has found, and lets them know that there are more in the river. I don't know if that's a good idea, as these two start to get some gold fever and want to know a little bit more about where is this gold. So that evening at their camp, O'Doul plays a motion picture showing things like trains and airplanes and city stuff. Boy kind of lets slip here that Medford had apparently promised to buy him an airplane when he gets him some gold. The cat's out of the bag, but Medford tries to explain things away, and Elliot insists that no, they won't destroy Tarzan's home by looking for gold. Well, the next morning, Boy brings Medford and Vandermeer to the river and gives them some of the gold nuggets, and also drops that Tarzan knows where there is a mountain of gold. Well, Tarzan has had enough of these guys, and he angrily orders them to leave. And Elliot promises to leave as soon as O'Doul, who has apparently come down with a fever, makes a recovery. Tarzan, though, gives O'Doul some jungle medicine, and he improves pretty quickly. But soon Elliot and Boy also have become ill with the same jungle flu. Elliot is pretty sick, and while he is alone with Medford, well, that crafty Medford accidentally breaks the glass of Tarzan's healing brew, leaving Elliot to die. Later he tells Jane that they have better medicine in their encampment, and although Tarzan doesn't really want to leave, Medford and Jane convince him that this is urgent and that he should go and bring back the medicine to the camp. He returns. Medford tells him that Elliot has died and that they have hidden away Jane and Boy. Now they will be returned to him safely only if he agrees to take them to this mountain of gold. Oh, those two-timers. Well, Tarzan takes them there, and Medford tells him where his family is being held. So Tarzan is about to leave. He's going to swing away on a vine when Medford shoots at him, hitting the vine and causes him to plummet to the ground far below. Oh no! Well, as we near the end of the film, I don't want to spoil too much, but what will happen? Will Tarzan be okay? Will he be able to rescue Jane and Boy? Will the evil Medford and Vandermeer get their greedy gold? Well, you got to watch the exciting ending for yourself to see how things wrap up. Let me get into some closing thoughts here. Tarzan's Secret Treasure was released in 1941. Now, this was the fifth in the MGM Tarzan series to star Johnny Weismuller and Maureen O'Sullivan. This would be followed by the very enjoyable Tarzan's New York Adventure in 1942. I reviewed this a while ago on my channel and really enjoyed that one. And that one would be the last in the series to feature Maureen O'Sullivan, and the last of the MGM Tarzan films before the series moved to RKO. This film was directed by Richard Thorpe. He was a prolific director who also directed the previous film, Tarzan Finds His Son, in 1939. Curious detail about Thorpe is that he was known as the original director of The Wizard of Oz from 1939. He was fired after 2 weeks of shooting because it was felt that his scenes did not have the right air of fantasy about them, whatever that means. So with the Tarzan films, the MGM films from the 30s and early 40s tended to be the more big-budget studio productions, more epic and cinematic stories. Whereas when we would get into the era of the RKO films of the mid to late 40s, it generally became lower-budget adventure films, maybe a little more formulaic with jungle action and different actresses playing Jane, of course. Look, I enjoy them all, MGM and RKO. But as I go through these on my channel, I've been trying to kind of measure and analyze the differences in style of these films of this series. It is kind of wild to see the difference when you go from the MGM era into the RKO era. I found out some interesting stuff from reading Johnny Weismuller's bio, Twice the Hero. It said that screenwriter Cyril Hume wanted to eliminate the character of Jane completely and make Tarzan into a bachelor of the jungle who's open to new romance. I don't know. Tarzan to me doesn't feel right without Jane around, sort of as that cool voice that is a reminder of the outside world, One of the earlier scripts had this idea of Tarzan alone and a beautiful glamour girl hunting big game in Africa, and she meets a broken-hearted Tarzan mourning the loss of Jane. The heads at MGM apparently said no to this idea, that they were glad to have Maureen O'Sullivan for at least 2 more films. So Hume was asked to leave, and the script responsibility was turned over to Miles Connolly and Paul Ganglin. So here are my thoughts on this film. I just thought that this was quintessential Tarzan. Johnny Weismuller as Tarzan, Maureen O'Sullivan as Jane, Johnny Sheffield as Boy, you've got Cheetah. And the first 15 minutes of the film are just a nice, tranquil window into Tarzan's domestic life. He's just hanging out with his family, swinging around and swimming, enjoying a nice jungle picnic. It's all great, and I love that kind of window into the world of Tarzan before the adventure even starts. And something else I'm finding I really appreciate in films like this one and some of the other Tarzan films is the romance of Tarzan and Jane. It's always very sweet and genuine. There's that purity and innocence to Tarzan's affection for Jane, and I just love it. When he asks things like, "Jane happy?" Like he's devoted to her, but wants her to be enjoying being there in the jungle with him, to be happy. I also really liked the action of this film. There's a lot of swimming, diving, swinging on vines, and all of the things you come to love in a Tarzan film. And his big showdown nearing the end of the film involved kind of flipping over some boats and some frightening alligators coming in for a fight. None of that disappointed at all. Again, Johnny Weismuller just continues to stand out to me as the perfect, iconic Tarzan. Minimal dialogue, the me Tarzan, back Umgawa, that sort of thing. But he still manages to have a sweet charm with how he communicates with others. And sometimes stubbornly just insists on his way. No guns! And a part of this film that I thought was touching and very well done was when Tarzan comforted the young native Tumbo, who had just lost his mother. He speaks to him only in his native language. And there's no subtitles. We have no idea what he actually says, but we can kind of tell he's giving words of encouragement to him. And I thought that scene was great. He's a mighty jungle hero, but he also has a compassionate side as well. Look, Weismuller was perfect as Tarzan, with his physical presence and character in the film. He's my favorite. What can I say? He's like Chris Reeve as Superman. And I have to make note of Barry Fitzgerald as the silly and lovable character O'Doul. He added some fun levity to the story, and that's something considering that he was also in the same film with Cheetah, who was also there sort of as the silly, lovable character. And, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. I caught Barry Fitzgerald not long ago in the Western Silver City with Edmund O'Brien, and he played a villain in that film. But, in my opinion, he is best when playing more of an enduring character that you just like right off the bat. There's a moment in the film that maybe you're uncertain of his loyalty, but nah, he's there to help out Tarzan and do the right thing. I had a good laugh from Cheetah as well, in scenes like when he gets into O'Doul's Irish whiskey. And, Cheetah's silly antics continue to make up a good portion of this film as well. By the way, and I realized I tripped up on this detail in some of my earlier Tarzan reviews, but Cheetah, which, to be fair, is a name that sounds feminine, was actually portrayed mostly by male chimpanzees, and the character Cheetah himself was male in the films. I think I got that wrong in a few earlier Tarzan reviews, so forgive me, my 3 fans. From what I've read, Cheetah was played by numerous animal actors such as Jiggs, Skippy, Harry, Dinky, and even Cheetah. So, by the way, did you know that Cheetah had an autobiography published in 2008? Sure enough, it's called Me Cheetah, the autobiography, the memoirs of Cheetah, but written in the style of a celebrity tell-all. And it's obviously entirely fictional, because Cheetah obviously didn't write this, but it's done in the style like he did, talking about his experiences on film, working with the rich and the famous. So, I've read a few old Hollywood biographies, and I don't know about this one, but maybe someday I'll check it out. Another thing I liked about this film was some of the special effects, the matte paintings of the dangerous cliffs and so on. Now look, for old practical effects, I thought these looked great. No, they're not going to be 100% realistic, but considering the date, I thought they did great with this. And the battle scenes and the scenes with the animals, yes, there are some moments in the film that maybe look a little janky, when they intentionally speed up the film clips of the stock footage, elephants that are charging and whatnot. But look, otherwise the film was filled with some great practical effects that I thought really added to the excitement of the film. And of course, Johnny Weismuller swinging around on vines and stuff all looks so natural, just fits perfectly in the film. Now, the underwater scenes were filmed at Wakulla Springs, Florida. It's a couple hours from where I live. I really need to make a trip there sometime. I think filming some of this stuff would be great. The springs look gorgeous in the film, with crystal clear waters, but apparently These weren't necessarily the safest places to swim. Now, again, quoting from Weismuller's bio, there's a story that actually comes from Johnny Sheffield about the Florida location filming. Here's the quote. Many scenes in this movie were filmed on location in Florida. Ross Allen would go ahead of us and search the bank for alligators and cottonmouth water moccasins. He found a few too. I remember one time he got a water moccasin on the bank and put it in his mouth and swam it back to the boat. A few minutes later, Big John and I were working right there on the bank where Ross captured that aquatic pit viper. I read this quote and thought, oh, I don't know, did this Ross Allen guy really carry a snake in his mouth? So then I started researching who Ross Allen was. And wow, I stand corrected. Okay, more than just working with animals on various Tarzan films, he was also famous back in the day for developing a tourist attraction, the Ross Allen Reptile Institute in Silver Springs, Florida. This was in 1929, and it featured various entertaining and educational showcases of things like snakes, venomous and non-venomous, alligators, crocodiles, and other exotic animals, all the while employing Seminole Indians of Florida. Visitors could witness live demonstrations such as alligator wrestling and snake venom milking. And Ross Allen had no issue with jumping right in the water to wrestle with gators and massive snakes. And yeah, he was the real deal. You know, his institute isn't around anymore, but his legacy lives on. He was sort of the Steve Irwin of his day. So really fascinating to read his backstory while researching this film. But you know, I need to wrap this one up. I learned a lot researching this film, and I apologize if I've gone down too many rabbit trails with this, but you know, I just find it fascinating to learn more about some of the background of these old films. And believe me, there's plenty more I could still ramble on about. But let me do you a favor and close this one out. Tarzan's Secret Treasure for 1941 starred Johnny Weismuller as Tarzan, Maureen O'Sullivan as Jane, Johnny Sheffield as Boy. It featured Cheetah and some silly antics. It was a story of Tarzan's tranquil family life interrupted by treacherous explorers hungry for gold. Features plenty of daring rescues, jungle action scenes, a lot of animals, and a memorable final showdown. The next film in the series would be Tarzan's New York Adventure, again the last one with Maureen O'Sullivan, and the final MGM entry before the series would move to RKO. Tarzan's Secret Treasure was an excellent Tarzan film, and it's one worth checking out.